Yeah, welcome to everybody. I'm happy to see you all again, and I hope you're doing well, all of you from all over the world. And we had the custom last time, I forgot about it last session when Kenya spoke to us that who would like to say hello through the chat and tell where you are from. This is always nice to know in your mother tongue. Tell us where you are and say hello to each other. The topic of my talk today is like the topic of this whole sequence of lectures, Chances and Challenges of Global Pedagogy. And with that, I address the aspect of globalization. And as we are living in the 21st century, of course, we are all affected by what globalization is. And as we can say out of our experience, it has become mainly in our time an economic term, which implies that economy is globally in an interconnected situation, and this is it's governed by capitalism. So this is our time where we are, that we are in a globalized world, and the aspects of globalization are given by economy and capitalism. And of course, we can see a lot of negative outcomes, and we are aware of negative outcomes like profit maximization, exploitation of minorities, destruction of nature, waste of resources, unfair distribution of wealth, and other things. So we see this is some kind of a powerful and violent civilization we have created out of this globalization when we have all these negative aspects in our mind. But of course, to do justice to our situation where we are, there are also positive aspects. So, for example, I spoke about there is an unfair distribution of wealth, but if you compare it maybe to the time 200 years ago, the situation was much more unfair, so to speak. Now we have an unfair situation north and southern hemisphere. In 200 years ago in Europe and North America and other places, we had a different situation, that there in the age of feudalism in Europe, there was maybe only 1% of the people who had this kind of standard of living. Now maybe 60%, 70% all over Europe have right now. So we can travel, we can have education, we have some kind of a health system and so on. So in the northern hemisphere, the distribution of wealth has become, so to speak, better. And I would like to do justice to that too. And we have an education system. And as we can see, we are privileged. We can come together and share our insights, our thought. This is something which is 200 years ago, there were no people who could read and write and stuff like that. Only 1% of the people were able to do that. So we take profit of that development too. But nevertheless, the negative outcomes we are facing right now, they are frightening, so to speak. We have a climate change problem, we have social problems, and we have maybe the threat of a third world war. And this is part of this time of globalization. And we see, and I think this is quite new for us, that global crisis cannot be solved anymore on a national level. This is something new. For a long time, you could have maybe the illusion, but you could have the idea that if you, in your nation, at your place, you create a good living condition, this is something you are secure in that. Maybe like Switzerland or something like this, so this is, or you have Costa Rica maybe as a place like heaven, but if everything happens in the world, everyone is affected, and we don't have this secure place anymore in the world. We need to take care of global problems on a global level. And this, of course, is everything what I said now. It's much more a political question. It's not an educational one. It's not a pedagogical one. But I think we have to bring in that pedagogical and educational perspective. And I became aware of that. It was some kind of an experience I made this year. I spoke already about it when I was in Chicago in springtime. There was this big IERA Congress, American Educational Research Association, and there has been 15,000 people from all over North America and other parts of the world, and all of them had some kind of affiliation to education and pedagogy. And it was some kind of a strange atmosphere in the city center of Chicago, because this city, it's like an image of capitalism. It's like an image of power and martial architecture, so to speak, powerful and closed and everything. And now people with a different kind of mindset, because become a teacher, doing education work, you don't do it because you want to have a capitalistic career. There are better ways to do it. So the mindset has been different, and that has been some kind of a colorful contrast in Chicago. And the topic was just the topic Kenya spoke about last week, about diversity and social justice in a society, and what can education do about it. And I became aware that the situation is in the world that every single pedagogy and every single school system in the world has its national curriculum, has its national culture, has its national circumstances. There is no global education established in the world. We have global ideas about education. Yes, we have global theories about education by the UN, for example. So there are many thoughts about it, but we have no global education system established. And because everything is connected to national politics. And if you look at Germany, for example, you have 17 countries and they have 17 different politics in every single country. And this is all over Europe, the situation. Yes, and I think Waldorf education is quite an exception. It's an interesting situation. There is an educational system which is not restricted, so to speak, to a national curriculum, to national standards. Of course, Waldorf education differs in every country due to national politics, but the pedagogical ideas, as they are applied in Waldorf education, they are quite unique in a global way. And it's not that kind of globalization like McDonald's or Coca-Cola or Starbucks. You know, if you have a Coca-Cola in South Africa, it's almost, I would say, the same as you have it in China or wherever. It tastes the same. So this is globalization. You have one idea and bring it into the world, and you don't change it in the world. And this is different around Waldorf. It's integrated differently in every single culture. And maybe much more in future than it is now, and of course than it has been done in the past. In the past, maybe we spread Waldorf education a bit more like Coca-Cola and McDonald's, so we tried to bring a European idea into the world, and we know that especially Martin Rawson is working on it when he speaks about decolonization of Waldorf education, that we have to adapt the color of a culture, the impact of a religion and everything. And we see that Waldorf education is stable concerning its identity, but it's flexible concerning adapting to a culture. And this is a new way of globalization, to take in a regional culture and adapt it into the system of Waldorf education. And this is this kind community we have all over the world, and which we can also feel in this Zoom room here together, that we share the same ideas, although we are coming from different parts of the world. This is something very much special around it. So my question is, what can education, and the special perspective of Waldorf education, what can it bring to those global challenges we are facing right now? And one thing I would like to start with is that it's interesting, if you speak about education, we have all the knowledge to have a better world. You know, it's not a lack of knowledge. We have good ideas about ecology. We have good ideas about peace and living in a good way together, social justice and everything. It's not a question of lacking the knowledge. We have good ideas, good theories, but we don't bring him on the ground. We are not able to change the world out of those good ideas. So, and this is something we really know. There is a motive, there is a goal of Waldorf education that we want to connect the knowledge with what is in our hands, for example, what we feel in our hearts. So to bring together head, heart, and hand. So to connect knowledge with action and attitude. So to have a better ecological world, for example, it's not about good knowledge, it's about good actions and good attitude. And this is something which is the very goal of what Wolf Steiner brought in 1919, that he said he doesn't want to address the intellectual mind, the rational mind only. He wants to address the feeling sphere and the will sphere also. And this brings in action and attitude and belief and everything. And of course, out of a critical perspective of educational sciences nowadays, you can think, oh, isn't there a problem connected to that? Because if you look back at the time of maybe the Middle Age, when there was the church in Europe ruling the educational system and the culture, of course, they had exactly that idea. They didn't want to bring knowledge to the people. They want to bring Christian belief, a Christian attitude, a Christian mentality to the people. So education was about educating the attitude and doing something good out of a Christian belief system. So, and when the age of Enlightenment came, that was some kind of a liberation. It was a freedom of the head which came into the society, and this brought autonomy to and individual autonomy in the world. And so there is some kind of a critic, some kind of a fear that if you enter the realm of feeling and will in education, there might be manipulation connected to it. And we have to be aware of that. We don't want to fall back behind the age of enlightenment. So we want to have the autonomy of the head, the autonomy of the consciousness, but in the very same moment, not losing the power of our feeling and will sphere. And this is some kind of the miracle and the challenge around Waldorf education. And I think people start to see that there are coming something with Waldorf which is a bit more committed, which is a bit more dedicated, so that our students, they have something, they have ideals, they want to change the world, and they have a positive attitude towards future. And this is something we can bring into our school system without manipulating. This is a topic I would just to start with, to have that in mind, that there is something special around Waldorf, which is not only touching the head sphere, but also the heart and the will sphere. And then I would like to address certain aspects, and I tell them before. I would like to speak what kind of global challenges and chances do we have. I would like to speak about social justice, as Kenya did last week wonderfully. I would like to continue on that topic. Then I would like to speak on the challenge of ecology, and then I would like to speak about digitalization and artificial intelligence. And the last point will be about worldviews and the question of dogmatism. So those will be the aspects I try to cover during my lecture. So I start with social justice. I think the big step we did in our time, that we have a great awareness in our time about social justice, and that we want that non-privileged people in any kind be recognized in our society, and we want to give them a place. We want no oppression, no suppression of minorities anymore. For a long time, culture was some kind of enslavement, and it was a war, the powerful against the powerless. the rich against the poor. And we have to be aware that the wealthy systems in Europe and North America, they are wealthy because of imperialistic military colonialism. It's still the outcome of it. So we are privileged in our world because we oppressed for hundreds of years on other countries and took the treasures out of those countries, the resources, and this is the global situation right now. And we have, if we face the problems in every single country of migration, this is a self-made problem, which just comes hundreds of years later out of the age of colonialism. We produced it, so to speak. And Africa is still a continent which is suffering by colonial foreign domination. It's still not found its own ground. And we have to be aware of this injustice. And of course, we are still in a time of capitalism oppression. So it's of course difficult because it's a bit political. I'm speaking right now, and we have a pedagogical topic, but I would like to say it that on the surface, on humanism and democracy and religion, and this is our culture, there is an underlying reality of racism and oppression of minorities. There is a racist, patriarchal, hegemonic consciousness which is still valid, and we know about it. And I think within our school systems, we have to be very careful to address it. And this was the wonderful introduction Kenya gave last week, that we really were aware of how it is still part of our time, this kind of suppression. So what's the answer of Rudolf Steiner? What's the answer of Waldorf education to this political situation we are all facing? And I think, out of my view, and I would like to suggest it, it's the idea of individuality. So Rudolf Steiner brought something in the anthroposophical worldview he brought, and which is also valid in Waldorf education, is that there is something universal in every single universal individuality, that we might be differentiated by nations, by religions, by gender, and so there are a lot of differentiations by family background and so on. And there is one thing, we have to, every single individuality has to be treated equal, and there has to be equal rights and equal access and equal participation in society. This we have to provide on a political level. But to guarantee equality, which is a big step, so to speak, in culture, to guarantee equality is not the same than gaining or being aware of individuality. And this is something more than the political discussions we have in our time. So please take it for granted, and believe me that I don't want to undermine those efforts about equality and social justice, but there has to be more. It's the question of individuality and giving every single human being the possibility to develop an own individuality and personality. And this is an educational task. It's not a political task. The political culture can provide a social justice system of participation. Education can help to build up individuality. And this is what we try to do. We have the concept of the human eye is a universal one. And this universal concept, which is not dependent on the skin color or religious belief or everything, which counts for everyone, this is something we would like to establish in our schools. And the idea of Steiner that every single individuality can find a source of self-determination, a source of individual creativity, this is something new in the world, and it's deeper than humanism, out of my view. I say that out of my own belief because this really brought me into anthroposophy to see there is something deeper than humanism, because it's the idea of the human individuality and that we support each other in that. And the idea of intuition, that we don't just follow a moral system and ethical systems, but that we give every single individuality the capacity of self-determination. And please excuse if I say something which might be a bit controversial, but I would like to say it. I think that the gender debate falls a bit short here in this aspect, because we want to have a gender equality. We want to have the same rights for everyone. We want to have diversity in the world. And yes, I agree with that. But more than diversity, I would like to have individuality. And I think if we don't have this meta-gender aspect, that the individuality is more than nation and more than culture and more than skin color, and it's more than gender. And we have to believe it. And if I put in my screen he and him, I don't feel very well if I put him, he and him. Because I would like to feel like an I, like an individuality, like a person. Not dependent from my gender. I don't want only to be perceived as an old white man. And so the gender debate, as important as it is for social justice, it falls short concerning the question, we are more than our gender. We are more than men and women and every single aspect we can imagine around it. And this is something we should not forget. And this is something which is a cultural question. And that might be a bit controversial, but I bring it in order to discuss it here. And if this is a world of perspective, which you can share with me, or if you disagree, please say me after that. And of course, we have to be very much strict and clear about problems around words spoken by Rudolf Steiner around it. There is racism in what Rudolf Steiner said, and there's racism in some part of his lectures, and we have to address it, and we have to take distance. But I have the strong belief that anthroposophy is totally free of it. There is no racism in anthroposophy. And I wouldn't say that Steiner was a racist, but he wasn't aware of racist remarks he did. And we take distance from that. And I have to do it with my students. And we have to be clear about it. And if we say, I read it just in an article by Martin Rawson, if we say, yes, because this is part of his time, no. That might be. This is not an excuse. So we have a sensitivity, and we should, out of this sensitivity, we have to address it like it is. But of course, we have to implement structure of social and culture of social justice also within our Waldorf schools. And as Kenya said, we weren't very much successful about it. I just speak about the German situation. The percentage of migration background children in German public schools is 43%. 43% all over all is the migration background in German Waldorf schools, in German public schools. And in Waldorf schools, the migration background is not 3%. So see that different, 43 in public schools, 3% in Waldorf schools. So we are not in the middle of our society. We are in a privileged situation, and we should, with all our power and effort, we should change that. We should be part of the middle of, that was the idea when Steiner founded Waldorf schools, not to have a privileged school system. I know that is not our intention, yes, but it has happened. And we have to take responsibility for that. On the other side, what I think is the strengths of Waldorf education in relation to social justice, that it's really a school which is not about differentiation between the children. So there is no selection process ongoing. And the method and the tool of selection selection by intellectual capacities, selections by learning groups, selections by fulfilling the norms and standards of the school system. All those instruments of the public school system we avoid. So because we don't do it, we don't have a selectional process in the learning outcomes, in the measurement of learning outcomes, we are open for everyone. And there's also aspects going with that. We don't have hierarchies of subjects. In normal schools, of course, intellectual subjects, they are very much in favor, and all the other subjects like the arts and music, you can do it, but it's a bit more, it's not important for your final degrees, so to speak. So this means a holistic approach, which addresses head, heart, and hand, means that children who have not this level of intellectual capacities in a certain age, and we have only referred to a certain age, they have the same chances in Waldorf schools. And I'm sure we can really provide a place for them to have a good development. And I think this is the most crucial problem of the public school system. And maybe in Germany, it's much more. I have been to Scandinavia and in Finland last week. It's a bit different there. But in Germany, after the fourth grade, there is a selection. And there is some kind of punishment for the intellectual not so gifted students. And there is a reward for the intellectual gifted students. And we create a biography out of it. We create a career out of it. And those children are 10 years old. And this is injustice. And so Waldorf schools, they are against those injustice system. And this is something I really appreciate. And if we can find a way, not have only rich, privileged, bourgeois children at our schools and can do something for the children with migration background, poor children, this would be the next step of Waldorf education. So far about my idea about social justice, with my main aspect, I would like to stress the idea of individuality around it. I go further now and would like to address the next aspect, and this is about ecology. And we see that the question of the climate crisis is really triggering people right now. And there is a green movement, ecology movement in the world. But I believe that this ecology movement is created out of fear, out of panic nowadays also. Young people, especially young people, they are overwhelmed out of the vision of fear that our world might not survive, that mankind might not survive if we have this habit of living any longer. We have to change our habit of living. We have to change our civilization. So, and I think Waldorf education and anthroposophy is offering a different perspective. So, and we should be quite aware that fear and panic is not a good counselor for our life. And also, I would, maybe it's a bit drastic to say, I would also say that beyond that ecological activity, there is some kind, I would call ecological egoism, because as we see that this kind of living, this kind of civilization can't survive because we don't have the resources anymore, we would like to change it in order to survive. It's understandable, but it's it's about our own survival, or maybe the survival of our children. It's the survival of the mankind. It's not about changing the world. It's not about the question, maybe our relationship to nature is the problem. Maybe our self-understanding as human beings is the problem. And that has been addressed by Rudolf Steiner very early, first in his epistemology, that he said we have to overcome this dualism between consciousness and world, man and nature, so that we are part of nature and the nature is part of us. And that the animals and the plants and actually the cosmic dimension belongs to us, that our consciousness is able to really connect to the cosmic dimension of our existence. This is something so overwhelming new as a cultural aspect. It's so meaningful for our life. It's the most deep message of anthroposophy. And when he speaks about angels and other beings, and this is to really show there is an energy, there is a force, there is a reality in nature which directly speaks to us and our consciousness. And our understanding and our own development has to relate to it. Monism means to really connect to the world, and has that the world is part of our soul, and that we are part of the soul and the spirit of the world. And in our education in Waldorf schools, not on a content level, but on a feeling level, we try to give the children this sense of coherence, Antonovsky would say, but it's a sense of coherence much deeper than we would imagine if you read Antonovsky, being connected to the earth in this sense, out of a free consciousness. So we would like that the children really connect to the world. It's much interesting for me that I met an author all of you might know. This is Charles Eisenstein, who speaks a lot about this question of the ecological crisis of our time. And he addresses this aspect in the very same way in one wonderful essay. And Laura will give the internet link for the essay. And I would like to bring a quotation now and speak about this. And the name of the essay is Extinction and the Evolution of Love. So I wait for the screen, Laura. Thank you so much. The deeper causes of climate change are identical to the deeper causes of most of the violence, injustice, and ecological harm on Earth. Some say that cause is capitalism, but the former socialist countries were just as rapacious as capitalist countries, if not more so. I propose that the root cause of ecocide is the world story of modern civilization. I call it the story of separation, the story that holds me separate from you, humanity separate from nature, spirit separate from matter, and soul separate from flesh. That holds full beingness and consciousness to be the exclusive province of the human being, whose destiny is therefore to rise to domination over the mechanical forces of nature, to impose intelligence onto a world that has none. The story of separation embeds capitalism as we know it. It scaffolds all of our systems. It mirrors the psychology that has adapted to those systems. Each story, system, and psychology perpetuates the others. I was very much impressed, and when I read those words, and it seemed to me something that could be part of the philosophy of freedom of Rudolf Steiner. It is the same effort to overcome the dualistic distinction of our consciousness, distinction between man and world, and to establish a monism. And of course, every religion establishes a monism. This is part of it. We have the same spiritual ground in every religion. But you know, the very new thing around anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner's works is that he found a epistemological ground in our own consciousness to establish monism. And I think this is the really impact. I tried to write about it several times. This is, out of my view, the really impact of the didactical aspect of Waldorf education. We do it differently because we want to establish a monistic consciousness during the learning process at Waldorf schools. You can close it again now, Laura. So we do education in order to overcome dualism. This is something, and this is a new way of doing ecology. And I think there's a longing in our time, not doing ecology out of panic and fear, but we really care for nature, and we really believe that nature belongs to us. This is a third aspect I would like to address. And now I come to my next topic. And this is about the question of intelligence and digitalization. So we know that our time is very much affected by artificial intelligence. And people fear how the face of our culture might change in the light of artificial intelligence. And there's some kind of fascination connected to it, what is possible out of this new technological capacity, and there is fear connected to it. And out of my view, I see a certain chance for Waldorf education and for what we do in this idea, because it's the first time that we're questioning what intelligence is. For a long time, we never questioned intelligence. We just developed intelligence. The intelligence was the new God out of the age of enlightenment. Every school system, every university, every research project was about the freedom and the independence, autonomy of intelligence, and develop it. But we never questioned it. And we thought the more the people know, the more they learn, the better it is. So it's about the quantity of intelligence, the quantity of knowledge, and there is progress in developing intelligence. But the way, the form of intelligence has never been questioned. And we do that in Waldorf education. We have an opportunity because from the very beginning, we wanted to introduce a different way of intelligence. We have the Michael time, and of course, Rudolf Steiner calls that new intelligence Michael. And we do it as a festivity in schools. And the background is we want intelligence we can call human intelligence. We don't want to have a mechanical thinking. We don't want to have a thinking which only reproduces mental images, because this is a thinking process where the human eye is not connected to what it learns, where the human personality is not connected to the learning content. So we have a knowledge system which can be stored in Wikipedia, a knowledge system which can be stored in books. You can have bachelor, master, and doctoral theses out of this knowledge system. But this system is lacking the human individuality, is lacking the human personality. And now, if we have this question of digitalization and this question of artificial intelligence, I think there is some kind of a chance in it. For Waldorf education, we do it differently. So we bring into our thinking responsibility. This can't be done by a machine. This can't be done by technology. Responsibility, being responsible of what we think and what we do, is something unique human. We can bring in morality. There is no machine, no technology which can have morality. And furthermore, empathy and feeling. This belongs to human intelligence. And what we do in our didactical and methodological steps in Waldorf education is that, for example, there is a farming period in Waldorf schools. Out of a normal curriculum in a public school, and you would like to have the goal, yes, the children should know where our nutrition comes from, where our bread comes from, and everything. You have a wonderful movie, 1 hour, and you know it. So it's on an economically way to do farming in a Waldorf school. It takes time, yeah, and it's some kind of dirty, of course, and it's not a good way of spending have an economical way of organizing teaching. It's not fast learning, it's slow learning. We do slow learning out of purpose because we would like the children to connect personally, to bring their own experience into their own learning. And this is some kind of a mantra for me to say everything the child learns, it should experience it. It should do it with his or her own hands. It should have a connection to the learning content. If you do that, you get a respect for nature. You get a respect for what nature brings to us, and you bring responsibility in it. Because the problem of our intellectual mind is being disconnected from nature, disconnected from social life, only fulfilling a purpose in a mechanical way. And this can be done by artificial intelligence much better than a human could do it, much faster. But doing it faster is not doing it better for humanity. And I think there is a main aspect in Waldorf education. We have that image that a real intelligence is connected to the heart and is connected to the will and is connected to other people, to community, and is connected to nature and to the cosmos, so to speak. And this holistic way, that there is also intelligence in nature, that there is an energy and power in nature. And if we understand another person, if we understand nature, we connect to that energy. This is a totally new, normally understanding and recognition and epistemology is about getting information. And information means there is no transformation. Object and subject are the same after receiving the information. But the process of epistemology, the process of knowing in how we do it in Waldorf schools is that by relating to the object, there is a transformation of the subject. And the object takes profit out of the understanding of the subject. For example, in a social life, we directly experience it. So imagine the situation you're in a school as a young child, and you have the feeling, this teacher doesn't understand me. This teacher doesn't see me. The moment you experience that as a child, you close up. So not understanding means to close up. And differently, if you have the feeling this person understands me, this person sees me, you open up, you get trust, you start to develop forces. And I think this is this powerful epistemology, this powerful understanding that knowing is not just understanding is not just taking in images, not reproducing images, and as constructivism would say, subjective images, but understanding is connecting to other people and connecting to the earth and setting free my own life forces so that there is a lively learning situation. This is so much powerful. And if people can explain it, they feel it the moment they enter a Waldorf school. They feel it the moment they enter a Waldorf classroom. It's not boring, it's lively. And those are the life forces we touch with our epistemology, with our consciousness. And this would be my answer to digitalization, that we bring in human intelligence. And this will be a research project of mine, and I hope really we are speaking about it, that will be part of an INESTI Congress we will have in 2025 to speak about human intelligence as part of what Waldorf pedagogy can bring to the world as something we see there. Yeah, maybe so far about this topic. Now I come to my last point, and this is quite interesting. The title for that will be that we have in our time developed a certain sensitivity for worldviews, a certain sensitivity for dogmatism, a certain sensitivity also for religion. So for a long time, we have had the experience through history that people were fighting for their worldview. They had a mission. And often people thought, because it's a good mission, I can fight for that, because we bring the good into the world. So this is how democracy is spread in the world. This is how Christianity has been spread into the world. So we fight for something which is good. And we would like the others convince of that what we have in our mind is good. And in our time, people are, after bad experiences, of course, they are sensitive. They don't want to be convinced by others. They want to find their own worldview. So the difference, there is a certain boundary between a conviction and wanting to convince someone else. I think it's necessary and important that every single individuality, it's part of being an individuality, not to just overtake the convictions of others, not to just overtake a belief system, not to just embrace anthroposophy because you have been a Waldorf student or whatever, embrace religion because you have been part of that culture. We are in individuality in our time means to search for your own belief, for your own understanding, for your own meaning in the world. And this is how I understand Rudolf Steiner, that he wants to set free the capacity for every single individuality to find his or her own meaningful approach to the world. Of course, anthroposophy is offering a lot, but he didn't want to create followers. And so we have to establish this kind of sensitivity within our movement. And maybe out of our strong belief, maybe out of our enthusiasm, maybe out of our idealism, sometimes it seems that we are on a mission to bring anthroposophy, and maybe me also, yeah, on a mission to bring anthroposophy into the world. But I think to have a sensitivity for this border, for this boundary between conviction and convince someone else, this is quite important. And I admire Rudolf Steiner very much. When he founded Waldorf schools, he said so clear, there is no anthroposophy as a content taught in Waldorf schools. And there is not anthroposophy part of Waldorf education, so to speak. It helps to do a good school. And that's it. It helps to do a good school. And it should prove to do a good school. And it should prove to understand the children better in a better way. This is what we try to establish with Waldorf schools. And I would like to describe that same aspect. I would like to describe that same aspect with the words implicit and explicit. I think nowadays we don't accept any more explicit worldviews. We need that in order to understand something. So if we describe anthroposophy for others, if we describe Waldorf education, if we describe Rudolf Steiner's way of seeing the human being and everything, and we take it as a theory, we take it as a hypothesis or something like that, hypothesis, we take it as something we work with, which part of our research tasks and so on, totally fine. We take it as something as a working base. Then it's the explicit way of dealing with anthroposophy is on that level of taking it as a theory, not as an ontology, not as a belief system, and so on. But on an implicit level, it becomes something stronger if it is the question how it is represented by myself. So it's not about what we talk, but how we talk. It's not about what we say, but how we do it in Waldorf schools. So the implicit way is the only way anthroposophy can live in our world. And as an image I have about it, sometimes the content can only live, can only exist when the way and the method we present it is is in relation to that content. I wrote an essay about it, which is published in the Rose Journal, and Laura will put it into the chat, this essay. It's in English and German and also in Spain translation. And the idea around is, maybe imagine you have maybe winter time and the snow is falling. And then you have the idea you want to show a snowflake to someone else. And you hold your hand open to catch the snowflake in order to show it. And the moment you do it, it's vanished. And this is it. How about anthroposophy? If you want to show it, if you want to bring it to someone else, and it's not on a process level, it's just on a result level, it's just on a content level. You don't adapt the way you do it so that the people can have an experience. It's vanishing. And the interesting thing, in our mental images, they have the illusion of grasping the content, but it's not there anymore, like the snowflake is vanished. So for bringing, for meeting anthroposophy, to have it as an experience and to have it as an atmosphere in the school, so to speak, it's a question of the process and the method and the way you deal with it out of a consciousness level. And it's not the content itself. And the more we speak only about the content, the more problematic it is to really grasp what's the energy in it. So this is maybe, sometimes I'm a bit strong about this point, and people, they don't like that very much. But I'm strong about it because I really believe that the life forces of anthroposophy can only be vivid when we establish a new consciousness and not dealing with anthroposophy out of this consciousness of mental images. So only implicitly it is effective, but explicitly it becomes a problem, anthroposophy. And it's maybe also a sign of our time that there is so much critic against anthroposophy in the media world. Maybe this is a call to do it differently and to bring it into the world differently. And this would be my approach about it. Thank you so much for listening. Yes, feel free to comment or ask questions. Maybe I go into the chat room. Maybe they are already.
Now, it was quite impressive, Jost. But it is a whole world of content. So I have to absorb a little bit.
Yeah, I give you the time. There is something from Andreas Büttner. Maybe you will speak about it, what you brought into the chat room, Andreas.
I gave you a link to two broadcasts we did with our pupils at Waldorf School Oldenburg. We were busy with history and talked about globalization, and we talked about human rights. Class 9 and class 11. That's some 1.5 years ago. Actually, I'm doing that with schools, with different schools in our region, not only with the Waldorf School, but I'm a priest of the Christian community and I studied history a bit. So I gave the history period when the history teacher was ill. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
I think perhaps it's interesting for you, at least if you understand the German, because the pupils speak German, of course.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You put it also in the Waldorf Ideen pool?
Not yet,
I think.
Teachers. We could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. Henrich.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the lecture. And I have a topic to your second thinking, life learning in nature is so powerful, especially in nature. And I think it fits to the idea from inclusion. The nature give everybody what they need and what they are able to do. And that is quite so good thing for the school system. For especially in German, we have the discussion of inclusion and how to fit it in the school.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes. I was impressed, Joost, by your last topic. You said, if I understood it well, if we spread around anthroposophical contents, that is not acceptable today, huh? Or that causes problems. You're looking for, let's say, the stream, how we ourselves deal with it. Is that what you meant?
Yes, so this I'll try to express, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And probably over the last years we have talked too much about anthroposophical contents, often in an isolated way. And that causes a lot of misunderstandings in the public realm.
Yeah.
I'm right? Is that what
Yes,
you...
yes.
Mm-hmm. So we have to make a shift. Can you explain it a little bit? What kind of a shift is necessary that people can engage with what we say and not oppose it? Can you describe that again? I think it's very important. I understand. Yeah, also what Eisenstein said is basically the same as this. When we have our positions, our fixed positions, it doesn't work today.
Yes.
What will work?
So I fear a bit of repeating myself, and this
Yes, please do.
I'm a bit careful not to do that. But maybe I get some help from others in the room. I start, and then you can maybe join in. You know, my approach to anthroposophy, maybe I was lucky about it, or maybe this is, you know, everyone has his or her biography of finding something meaningful in life. Yes. And of course, the moment you connect to Waldorf and anthroposophy, you find something meaningful. And you have a commitment and dedication to that. And I would never questioning that. I would never questioning a deep religious feeling or something. So what's the point I'm trying to say is, the moment something is important for us and we meet someone who doesn't see this and maybe has a different belief, whatever, we have a subtle, being a good person, we think this person is missing someone. This person is lacking someone. And you know, this moment, we have found something meaningful for us, for ourselves, and we believe that other people who haven't yet found it or didn't found it, have something else, they don't have the same good life perspective as we have. And this creates something which is not acceptable anymore. It's not acceptable anymore that we think because we have found something meaningful, it should be valid for everyone. For a long time, that has been how culture has been spread into the world, and with powerful wars, you know, how you can't understand, how can you fight a war out of religion? It's not this, you know, and people did it, and they did it for the good. They thought they were doing it for the good. And this is not acceptable anymore. And I'm happy people feel this. So if people reject Waldorf, and reject anthroposophy because they think this is a sect, they are right to do. And we should be careful about this distinction between our own conviction, and I would never touch it. It's really something holy for everyone, and this is the source, what we do, but to accept every single other belief and conviction. This is one of the differences. I see Martin are you going to speak about that too? I see
Yeah, Martin.
Yes, I could try. I mean, this distinction between implicit, meaning, I live the ideas that I have embodied. I don't need to argue them, I live them. And at the same time, the need to be explicit about it. The need to be explicit is also the need to be critical. It's no longer possible to say, why are you doing that? And the answer is because it's in the curriculum or because Dr. Steiner said so. I mean, it's no longer possible to do that. I guess we all acknowledge that. But the next step is then to be able to develop arguments in context. In other words, using language that the other people speak, that your interlocutor, the people you're discussing with, that we can both find a common language, and then we can find our way back to the reason. So the reason is not because Steiner said it, or because it's in the curriculum, or because somebody who made a deep impression on me once said it, but I now have to kind of walk that. I need to walk that into my body, and from there I need to find the words to express it so that a person I'm talking to will understand it and I will understand their response to it. I mean, I think that's how I understand this relationship between implicit and explicit. And I think it's very helpful to have this distinction, because there's not an either or. We actually have to do both.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is when Steiner created his epistemology in the philosophy of freedom, he really tried to touch something that he said, we have mental images, and those mental images, they are wonderful to grasp a content fast. You have a quick possibility to grasp a content, and this is a survival tool. But by doing it, we are missing the force in it. We are missing the humanity, as I said. We're missing the energy in it. This energy comes, as Martin said, if we connect what we think to our body, to our heart. Then our personality can connect to it. And then it becomes human. And Steiner said in his philosophy of freedom, we have to bring the will into our thinking, because the will is not an illusion. The will is reality, and it's the same power which is in nature. So if we develop a totally different mindset, a totally different consciousness, which is magic again, but it's not a magic out of adapting, it's a magic out of following or oppression or suppression or whatever, and as it has been in former times, out of only but it is a magic out of autonomy. And this powerful connection of spirituality and autonomy, this is not only a question of belief, it's a new tool to develop our consciousness. And by bringing images, narratives, let the children do something with their hands, this is what Martin says. It's not only I think about it, but I'm into it, I'm connected to it, and it becomes part of my capacities and skills. Davina, and after that, Sven.
Hello, I found this evening super interesting, so thank you so much. I just want to talk a little bit more about the implicit and explicit kind of ideas you've been talking about in terms of Waldorf teacher education. And so I'm really interested to think about, well, because I'm a student myself and I've just started, and I'm really interested to think about, well, how explicit is it important to be with Waldorf teacher students versus implicit? Because what I'm sort of witnessing now is that you know, in where I live in the UK, there are many teachers teaching in Waldorf schools who don't necessarily have Waldorf training, who are kind of, you know, going along with things that they see in the classroom that they like about Waldorf education, but don't necessarily have that anthroposophical roots and kind of understanding, if that makes sense. And does that matter? I don't know. It's quite a big question, but I'm curious to see how you might answer that.
Thank you so much for that question. Sven, are you going to go into it a bit, also coming from England, or shall I say something?
I had a different idea, so go ahead and answer that, please.
You know, I think in teacher training, you should speak about anthroposophy in every content. There's nothing to hide, and you have to open the books, so to speak, and let the young students approach and study it and discuss it on a highest intellectual level you can reach. Yeah. So there should be research, there should be criticism, there should be discussion around it. But you should really speak about what is anthroposophy in every single aspect, and read Steiner's book and see what is the way he is presenting his ideas and so on. But as I said, this is the level you present it, and the teachers are free to deal with it. And because we all know there are so many aspects, it needs 50 years to get closer to that, and we still don't know about a lot of things in the work of Rudolf Steiner's. So it's not about us to change the mindset of the students, but to offer them something they can work with, and they should know what is anthroposophy and Waldorf about. But within the Waldorf school, you know, if you say, for example, there are countries it's not allowed to do the morning verse, and stuff like that, or there are traditions, Waldorf traditions, by political reasons they are not allowed, or maybe people don't want to do it, and it's not necessary. We had it last time. It's if you speak about Michael, it's a different narrative in every single culture. It's even for our culture, it's not a very common narrative, you know. Outside of Waldorf circles, nobody knows about Michael. It's just maybe in some churches you see pictures of it. That's it. So if you bring narratives, there's a reason for those narratives. If you bring the morning verse, there's a reason for this. But it's not connected to this tradition explicitly. There's an implicit narrative. And if we touch that narrative, this is important. So if it means to encourage the children to fight for the right, this is something, you know, the question of justice and injustice is not something of consideration. It's something about action. If you observe injustice and you just observe it, you become part of it. So we want to have the young children to fight for justice and to fight against injustice, because it's not something you can sit on a couch and think, oh, this is not right, what's going on there. No, we want to have young children to fight for what is right and wrong, or against wrong and what is right. And so this is a narrative around Michael. This is the reason we bring it into the schools, because there's someone fighting against it, against evil, so to speak. And we want the young people not just sitting there and complaining about the world, but to do something about it and have the courage to do it, and overcoming maybe their fear and something like that. And so this is a question of explicit and implicit. I think also in Waldorf schools, if you want to do the tradition as it is, you lose what's implicit connected to it. And we can have a much more authentic Waldorf school, with much less Waldorf elements. Sven, is it helpful for you, Davina, this way?
Yeah, absolutely. Very helpful. Thank you very much. Really interesting.
I'm wondering whether there is a generational and grammatical aspect here. When I was listening to you, it occurred to me that the first generation of anthroposophists defined themselves through being anthroposophist. So I am a theosophist, I am an anthroposophist because I belong to the club. That's the kind of person I am, and all my friends are as well. So we are like this and everybody else is not. So that's a being thing. And maybe the second and third generation defined themselves through having anthroposophy because they read all the lectures. And, you know, this is certainly when I entered the movement, you weren't anybody unless you could quote exactly from which book on which date a particular line came. You had to prove yourself as having anthroposophy. And I'm wondering what would change if we changed anthroposophy into a verb now. I'm not quite sure what that verb would be. To anthroposophize sounds a little bit complicated, but if we did actually more, a friend of mine refers to it as a tool and says anthroposophy is something to use in order to see things more clearly. But if we took a step even further and said, no, it's to anthroposophize means to approach the world in a certain way, then we suddenly take the status away from it. You no longer have to be it. You no longer have to have it. You just have to do it, which makes us all relatively equal, I would have thought.
There's not a question I can answer now, so I take that, and I often think about it, and maybe I take that what you said as a opportunity to say something. What I say can often be understood as I wouldn't give credit to what wonderful work has been done in the world out of anthroposophy. Wonderful schools and everything. So, and there is a lot of energy and power by former generations brought to the world. And I appreciate that very much. And just want to say, our task is here now. We are in the 21st century. We have a different situation. I embrace this sensitivity towards worldviews and dogmatism. Sensitivity that we don't accept dogmatism anymore, because there's so much evil coming out of it in wars we have. So the young generation is sensitive, and so we have to implement this sensitivity into our anthroposophic and Waldorf doing. This is the idea. But it's not that I think we are better or something. It's our task now to do it differently. There has been strong willpower, and there has a dedicated commitment to found Waldorf schools. This is a founder generation. And now there's a culture we have to establish, which is a bit something which belongs to our time. This is it about. Shiva, if I say it right.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and you have covered a lot. Just like last year, I remember you covering like a 360-degree view of world of education and anthroposophy, and I'm really grateful that I'm here this year as well. And like you said, I think it's important for us to take world of education to everybody, because that was something that kind of disturbed me a lot. Even now in India, it's like it's for the people who have some privileges. It's not available for everybody. And I started as a parent. I understood anthroposophy, and I was so deeply drawn to it. And then I became a teacher. I wasn't trained at all. I went into the school, I observed other teachers, and then we had internal training, and then I studied the lectures and everything. But every time I went back and read something, it was more about who you are, what you practice, how conscious you are, and especially when you're among children. I think it was like a step up every time. And when you become conscious, I think we become a lot more available for the other person and not judge them for what they don't have, and not feel proud for what we have found. And that was kind of a learning for me, because every time I took the principles of Waldorf and how to look at the child as a whole being to people who weren't familiar with the concept, it was a big argument. And they were like, what language are you talking?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a bit of a struggle to take it to people and make them understand that I am doing this because I have a deep conviction and I believe that someday you will find this, and really hold that intention for them. And and I also feel that the way you said the narrative is important. In India, the story of Michael might not be relatable, but we have the story of other demons, the asuras. So where good takes over evil. So that is something that they can relate to, something that comes from their culture. But it is important to take to the children to build that courage in themselves to go fight that evil and do it for the well-being of others rather than putting ourselves in the first place.
Yeah.
That I think it's like a big takeaway for me. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Schieren. Deja.
Hi, thank you so much, Jost, for your perspective. I'm certainly still digesting a lot of it. And I think I kind of want to piggyback off of what Sven was talking about, more specifically around the importance of language and how we use it. And a little separate from the train of dialogue that's been happening so far. Early on, I heard you mention how you don't think that Steiner is a racist, and specifically for the reasoning behind not being that being his intention. And I just want to challenge us to kind of take back the true and original understanding of the word racist and racism as not a slur or something pejorative, as merely a descriptive term, as someone or something that perpetuates the hierarchical thinking of races in order to perpetuate a certain group having power over others. And certainly Steiner could have perpetuated that, and also gave us beautiful philosophy around interacting as human spirits and in being able to educate young minds. And both of those certainly can be true at the same time, and kind of backing off this idea of just racist as a pejorative term and just like as a descriptor, and certainly influencing how we view things and what we certainly stand for in our principles. Certainly not here to change minds, but just wanting folks to think about things like that.
Thank you for that very much, Deja. And I would really like to discuss that further. I think it takes time to really understand this. I think this distinction is very interesting, not having a kind of judgment, but have a description and being clear about that description. And if it's appropriate for Rudolf Steiner, if it's appropriate for anthroposophy, if there is some kind of a hierarchy between people, if I can say for myself, if this would be the case, I wouldn't connect to it at all. I don't believe in hierarchies between people. And I would do everything that there is equality between people. And the concept of individuality is, as I see it in the work of anthroposophy, is for me the ground of it. Although I see that there is a Eurocentric, chauvinist and racist perspective in many remarks and lectures of Rudolf Steiner. Yes, and this is, I reject that. Yes, but this is a discussion difficult to have, but we have to have it. There is no need to avoid it, no way to avoid it, I think. We have to face it, and there has to be done publications around it and so on, and research. So I will consult you about that. I believe you are in New York, I understood last time, at Waldorf School in New York.
I'll pop my contacts in the chat. I'm at the Brooklyn Waldorf School in, Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, I will write to you. Thank you so much, Deja. Christoph.
I have a question to Martin. in the context, Martin, we spoke, I fully understand. You cannot say anymore it's in the curriculum or Steiner have said it. I understand it. But what is then my source? Where I find what I should do as a young teacher? Is Martin still there or not?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether I should answer that. Yeah. I mean, it's all very well Steiner saying, he expects teachers to develop the curriculum in the moment, reading the child. That's an ideal, and one can understand why he says that, but it's not very practical for teachers, until they've had about 30 years of experience, and even then it's a risk. Yeah. No, I think we have to do both things. We have to trust in Allah and tether our camel at the same time. In other words, we have to build on actually 100 years of extremely valuable pedagogical experience. I mean, most Waldorf schools are successful because the curriculum is enjoyed by the children and very much enjoyed by teachers teaching it. And on the basis of that, I think we have a responsibility, let's say, of senior teachers to modify, realign, revisage, and change so that it can people can step into things that have been tried and tested. So I agree. I would say to anybody, read the various published curricula that we have, because they're really good and it works. But here and there, we're going to have to ask questions about it. But I don't think that everybody everywhere is going to have to do this. I do think there's a kind of hierarchy of experience. There's a kind of vertical dimension to experience. It has to be placed into a horizontal set of relationships. Just because I've been teaching for over 40 years doesn't mean I know any better. I just know more.
Thank you.
Other remarks, maybe something from the chat? Elisabeth, is there something you would like to share with us? You wrote something in the chat. Elizabeth Stewart.
Yes, I finally clicked myself back, just unmuted. No, I just wrote a couple of things that occurred to me as you were speaking. First of all, I find it very hopeful and very inspiring to look towards the future and to see that more Waldorf influence or people are attending the AERA conference. It can be a very stultifying organization, but the Waldorf impulse really enlivens it, I think. I've been to several myself. And then two things just occurred to me from your talk, that years and years ago, I attended a World Teachers Conference in Dornach, and no, at the Goethean, the Goethean, I'm sorry. Was it? Yes, it was, must have been. And a woman there said, every true meeting between individuals is a pedagogical moment, which I think really speaks to what you were speaking about in terms of connection and human connection, and the value of not like having a book in front of us when we're teaching somebody, right? That it is person-to-person teaching. And then the other thing I wrote is kind of a laundry list of things I wanted to bring up. I find Parker Palmer's work incredibly inspiring, especially his first book, To Know As We Are Known. And I just wondered if you were aware of that book, or if others had found a way to kind of knit that together with Waldorf philosophy, because for me, there's a lot of consonance between the two.
Isn't there a connection between Arthur Sainz and Parker Palmer? They wrote a book together. I know about it, yeah.
Yes, about higher education, I think.
Yes, yes, but I don't know this book by Parker Palmer. Thank you so much for recommending it. Maybe, Laura, you can give us the link for it.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this lecture. It's really, really great. It's like drinking water when you're thirsty. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, so we have come to an end right now. I'm happy to announce the next lecturer. This is Christoph. You're aware of it, speaking to us next Tuesday about the human factor in education. So I think it's easy for you to bridge from today to speak about human intelligence. You speak about the human factor. I'm looking forward to your contribution. And yes, I wish you, thank you for attending this talk today. It's really nice to meet you all again. And I wish you a good day, a good evening, good night, wherever you are. And Laura will upload the video the next days, I think. And looking forward to see you again next Tuesday together with Christoph. All the best for you.
Thank you, Jost.
Thank you. Hey!
Thank you.
Look at this. Wonderful.
Thank you, Jost.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Danke.
Bye-bye.
Tschüss.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tschüss.
Thank you very much.